you're a teacher. You teach for how long?
I taught for about 8 years.
Okay.
And then when I became a mom, my husband and I were deciding on the whole childcare thing. And so he's an investigator with the police department. At the time, he was just on patrol. So I basically said, well, I kind of want to stay home with the baby. So he's like, well, do you think that we can afford that? And so I was basically going to be sacrificing my salary. So I worked the numbers and everything. I'm like, well, if we don't get a new car and if we cut this and if we don't do this, so we could barely make it. And so then that's what we did. And then I became a stay-at-home mom, which I never, ever thought I would be a stay-at-home mom. And then I didn't even... So then becoming a politician was kind of the same thing. Like I never thought I would be a politician. So I went from teacher, stay-at-home mom, and then got into politics.
Is that also did you also get like the itch of, I want to make a bigger difference? Is that what it is as well? Or like
there was always that, right? So when I was, a stay-at-home mom, I kind of stumbled upon some things that weren't going well in my community and some injustices that I thought, how could this be true and right? And that's kind of where the whole like La Bota thing happened. And it was just, I guess, taking an issue and seeing, okay, well, what do we need to do to get to the bottom of this and how can we fix it and what needs to be done? And
it's the parent mind, right? You have children and you're just like, oh, hey, I'm starting to think for the future. Because like, same thing with me. I was like very careless of what was going on around me. Instead, I had children and I'm like, hey, the streets is too narrow and this is this and that. And you start thinking of the things you want to improve. Is that something that happened as well?
Yeah, because then I started thinking, okay, so like, I'm going to get a little philosophical here, right? But it was really down to like the American dream, right? The American dream of owning your own home. And so my husband and I had achieved that, but then there was problems with it. So then I thought, well, is this what my kids are going to look forward to when they buy a house? So I started thinking, no, this is wrong. And the way that the system is, it's a systemic problem. So what can I do to try to fix it and hopefully try to make some changes so that when my kids and other children and in the future, they don't have to deal with the same issues. So that's where I get motivated to do things is, wanting to fix things that are broken. And because once you become aware of that something is wrong or aware of something, at that point, you can't ever say that you didn't know.
Yeah.
At that point, you either say, well, yeah, I knew and I did something, or yeah, I knew and I didn't do something. And so I don't ever want to be on that side where it's like, yeah, I knew about it, but I just didn't do anything. So that's where a lot of my like fuel comes from, as far as like taking on issues is like, I know about it, and then what am I going to do about it?
Awesome, that's great. And I know you're in District 7, correct?
Yes.
What area does that cover?
It's mostly the west side from Markley Street all the way to the Columbia Bridge.
Okay, so it's a big area.
Mine's that area.
Yeah, huge.
Well, it's not just that area. I also have the mall. Like I have
okay.
from all the way to Springfield, actually.
Okay.
You guys are just outside of my district. So
Okay.
all the way to Springfield, and then to Del Mar, where Rangel Field is. And then behind there all the way to International. All the way to Troutman Middle.
Okay.
Wow.
And then now my boundary extended to include some of Shiloh because of redistricting. So I actually have like the largest land-wise district. Well, I used to. Now with redistricting, I think all the districts grew.
Oh, wow. Because Laredo's growing like massively.
Yeah.
It's like so much. I mean, I get lost. I need the GPS to go anywhere. Like before I would get any, you tell me to go anywhere and I'll just boom, go. Now I need GPS to go everywhere, and all the construction and everything going on. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see, but it's also a lot of things that, we have to deal with as well with that.
Have you
right?
driven out to Mines Road?
Yes, I do.
During traffic time?
I took the wrong turn once. I wanted to cry.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to get out of there. Yeah, I go there a lot because I do like the LED lights. So they have a lot of trucking companies out there, and they do want those. Like they prefer them, so I go out there and I sell them there. So I'm there a lot, but yeah, it's after like 6, 7 o'clock, I try not to go out there, or during traffic time. I do avoid it, to be honest. Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you think Laredo faces the most as challenges? What do you think are some of the things that we really need to touch base on compared to other cities that might have already fixed those challenges?
Laredo, we have to look at, I think, the bigger picture. Where do we want to take the city, and how are we going to get there? And put aside wants along the way. It's like when you set a goal for yourself, right? And even though you may get a little sidetracked along the way, you still know where you're headed and you still work towards that goal. And what I have noticed is that sometimes we have a goal, like we have a master plan or we have a comprehensive plan, but the interests of, individuals kind of try to take priority over the main focus of where we're headed. And I think as long as we all have that mindset that we're here for public service and not self-service.
Yes.
And even if putting the needs of people and the community above your own needs, even if your own needs are compromised at the time, it's still your job and our fiduciary duty to make sure that we are good stewards for the taxpayer monies and looking after the interest of the public as a whole. And sometimes there's conflict there with people who want to do something that maybe, and I'm going to refer more to like land use as an example. You have a piece of land and it's zoned a certain way. It's in a certain part of town. Maybe you want to put something there that doesn't fit the area, that doesn't fit the zoning. And so then people might think, but it's my land. I want to do this. This is what I want to do. But it doesn't fit the community area, right? So that's where they would ask like for a zone change, or they would ask for a special use, or they would ask for a plat to use their land in a certain way. But we as a planning and zoning department at the city, we have to say, wait a minute, you can't put a warehouse there.
Yeah.
You can't put a house there. This is a business area. And in Mines Road, in my district, in that area where there's a lot of traffic, you'll see there's a mix of houses with warehouses, with stores. And I don't think we've laid that area out as best as we could have. And so that's kind of where you'll see some problems. You'll see warehouses next to homes, and there's conflict there. And I would like for us to move forward all across the entire city to say, this is how we're going to map the city out, like future land use, future thoroughfare plan. We have those, but do we follow them? We don't always.
Yeah, I could tell you that from experience. I grew up and live in La Riera, right? My mother does, and a lot of my family does there. And that's what they call it, La Riera, right? Because they had a lot of warehouses, and they used to, and they used to develop bricks there back in the day.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of companies there, and the thing about it is, the companies are growing, and so are the neighborhoods. So they're growing and growing, and now they're like right next to each other. And I can tell you that it's been a whole mess with there, especially in that area. We have the Wilkinson Junkyard. And it's just, wow. I mean, the things that they've done to that little neighborhood. And I mean, you look back and you look at the map, like the college is very close by there. I mean, there's a lot of things that are very close by there. And you can say, how can the city allow it to happen? But it's the same thing. It's companies that have been grandfathered there from years ago, and they weren't that big when they started. They weren't doing what they were doing now. Now they're growing and growing, and they want to keep growing and buying land. But also the neighborhoods are growing too. Yeah. And we're having more people come in, and it's just something where I could see the conflict. And it's real hard for, anybody to go against big business. I mean, you have a business degree, you see it's good for the community here and there, but where do you draw the line, right? Where's the balance?
The balance, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. Because, for example, Mines Road, right? People will say, well, they should have never put houses out there. But then you have people that come all the way from the south or, District 8, by downtown to come and work out there. And sometimes, it would be better if there were houses out there so that the people that work out there could live out there. But we don't have like a grocery store out there. We don't have health clinics out there. We don't have a lot of restaurant options out there. So you have to come into town, and that's part of the problem. You look at the South, the way that's being developed. Out there, it's like another little mini city.
You got everything out there.
Yeah, and that's what we need in the Mines Road area too. But they say, well, there's a lot of there's not enough rooftops out there to support this business. But they're not taking into account the unique situation that Laredo has. That we're looking at population in terms of how many people live here, but we're not looking as how many people come through the city every single day that don't live here. And all of those people that come here are potential customers. And that's just kind of not the way that business has traditionally modeled itself. They look at households and rooftops and things like that. But, that's where...
Yeah, I mean, hey, these people are passing through, but they stop for food. They stop to shop. I mean, they stay here and they get their necessities. Sometimes they'll even stay here for days.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just one of the biggest import-export, maybe even the biggest.
Yeah.
Well, Cali has something to say about that, but we're probably one of the biggest import-exports here. So, like, we have to take that in consideration, how much traffic we get in and out. I mean, how much revenue is being there and how much revenue is lost by not having those businesses or giving people those options.
Well, we're the largest inland port.
We are large. Yeah, we are.
We brag about that.
Yeah, that's good. That's something to brag about.
Yeah.
So Mines
Yeah.
Road has a lot of traffic, but I feel like so does the city of Laredo. Like compared to 10, 15 years ago, when I was in high school, I could get from point A to point B in no time.
10 minutes.
Now it's like it takes me probably like 30, 45 now. So I think traffic in the whole city is going up. Is there anything in mind to kind of alleviate that? Maybe the schools as well. The schools sections get congested with traffic. So is there any? Because I can't imagine a way to like fix that.
Well, there actually, yes, there is. So the future thoroughfare plan, for example, we have that as part of our comprehensive plan. So I'm going to get a little boring here for a minute, but I'm going to sum it up quickly. Basically, it's the city, the county, the state, even our federal representative, all we're having to work together for funding and planning. And so you'll have these plans in place, but the execution is a lot slower than the planning. So yes, there's like, okay, this is going to get congested, so we're going to plan for this. And the thing with the schools and the problem that I've learned since I've come in is mostly handling the traffic. The schools are not, not to talk bad about the schools, but they're not really good about planning the traffic. They rely on the roadway. They rely on the roadway to become like a holding area for the people that want to pick up their kids and stuff. And we at the city have struggled with that to, I guess, negotiate like the land use for them. They want to put the school and they want to maximize how much space they have for that. And then they need parking and they need park and they need all these things. But they don't really like account for, okay, you're going to end up with 200 cars every day at this time. So where are they going to go? And for that is more like, well, they can just like queue on Del Mar, or they can queue on this road. And for us, that's a hassle, or like it's a struggle because our roadways are not supposed to be parking lots. And you see it in my district and you see it around schools. And it is an issue that we have.
The Del Mar area gets pretty packed too. And like you said, it's a hassle, but it's also a hazard because it's potentially dangerous,
That's very true. I'll just send my wife to pick that. No, but you say like, for example, you said like progress is real slow. Could it be because also not everyone goes through that? Like for example, not everyone drives through your district, or like in other words, a lot of people don't even go to Mines Road. They don't know what's actually going on, how long it takes you from point A to point B. You could tell them, but it's not the same as them being in the car feeling that. So that could be an issue too. Like they don't really understand. Hey, take the drive out there, and then maybe you'll see a little different, right?
Well, I think the problem from like I'm speaking as a government representative is that we get funding based on our population, right? And so our population is determined by our census. And so every 10 years, they take a census count of how many people live there, and then that determines how our funding is appropriated, right? Like on a national and on a state level. But in Laredo, we don't have good turnout for census. And so there's a lot more people that live here than what is accounted for. And so that really does hurt us in terms of the monies that we get. And when it comes to projects, it's always about the money. We don't have the money. We don't have the money. And so we have to fight, and myself included, because I sit on the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which the mayor appointed me to sit on as a council person. Like there's some committees that I sit on, and I do it because I know that my area needs a strong representative there to push for that area, and I have been, right? So we got some funding going for the Vallecillo Road, which has been in the works for a long time. And not to say that I made it happen or I got it done, but I'm just saying I added to that, being able to push for it. and the need for it. There was a River Road project that had stalled out that I was like, we need to push for this. We need to, because when you think about a roadway, you don't realize that, you know, all the different landowners that you have to communicate along that roadway, that you either have to get them to donate the land or you have to buy the land from them. And all of those negotiations take time. And then it's not just the roadway, it's also the right of way for future growth. So you have to acquire all this, then you have to take environmental studies. And it's just such a long process. But there are roadways coming in District 7, the Hachar-Ruthinger Road, which we had given originally to Dannenbaum. And then there was that big old scandal. So now TxDOT took over that project, and they're going to build that road, break that ground in 2023. So there's hope.
That's
and
cool.
there's roads
Yes.
coming. And in the South, there's a lot of roads and monies that way. So, but it comes down to stuff like that.
I can understand. There's a lot of technical things going in, and more than one variable to just get that happening. And let's say, for example, you get the ball rolling, and let's say someone else has a different decision. If once the plan isn't put in place and is implemented, could they put a stop to that, or could people go in there? So that could also deter what's going on,
Well,
right?
politics, right?
Yeah.
So you get, like, let's say at the time, like I'm right there, I'm at the MPO, right? So right now we all make decisions based on my input. But then let's say I don't get reelected. Then the next person comes in and says, no, I don't think that's as important as this. And then, okay, so then everybody like goes and focuses. And we're actually talking about how to change that and how to
Yes.
prevent that, because we've actually acknowledged that it does happen. And, you know, you say, this is the direction we're going in. And then somebody else comes and has that leadership role and that seat. And then they're like, no, we're going to go this way. And so you're kind of like, that's part of the problem too.
A lot of progress gets lost. A lot of time gets wasted. I mean, I can only imagine. So it might be hard for you to be like, how could I take on this project that's going to last longer than whatever my term is, you know? It puts people in that position where like, I might just want to focus on things I could do now.
Well, you
right?
hear people say, well, I believe that they should only have one term, right? 4 years. And I hear stuff like that and I'm thinking, 4 years isn't enough to accomplish.
What can you do? I mean,
It's very hard to get things done in 1-2 years. And, you know, even with me, I've been in for a year and a half and people, well, you haven't done this and you haven't done that. It's like, I barely came in, you know, and then I only have 4 years. And then if I don't get reelected, then what happens to everything that I put in place? And that's kind of also too, is that you have people coming in, they try, but then you also have people in the community that think that you should only have 4 years. So there's also that where it's like people are instead of seeing the common ground and the things that we can agree on, we focus on the things that we don't agree on, and then we don't get anywhere.
yeah, it's basic politics, right? That's the way it goes.
So talking about what people say, when you were running, when you were at your beginning steps, did you get a lot of like support, a lot of, you know, good support, or did you get a lot of negativity? What did you see the most coming up in doing this?
I saw a lot of support, mostly support. I mean, you always have your
The negativity.
yeah, and when I ran, so it was an open seat, right? And George Alkill had decided that he wasn't going to run again, and I ran against 10 other people. So it was a kind of what you're seeing with the mayor's race. I had that in my district, and I look at some of these open seats, and there's like 2 people running, and I'm like, what's going on? Where's everybody else? You know, like so I had a lot of different people running, and with that, the community is split because everybody supports their candidate, right?
Yes.
So every candidate has their supporters. So, but at the end of the day, you know, I was in the runoff. I got it to the runoff, and so a lot of people that supported some of the other candidates that didn't make the runoff, they came over and kind of, you know, I was like, well, you have to pick between these 2. So which one do you want?
Yeah, which by the way, if there's 10 candidates, more than likely there's always going to be a runoff.
Yeah.
It's real hard to get over 50 when there's 10 different candidates. So, and it's the turnout, man. That bothers me a lot. The turnout in voting in Laredo is like dead to me. And that's why I think it's so controllable. Like, and everyone has the idea they could win and they could do it because they really can. I mean, you put 1,000 votes out there, it makes a difference, depending on districts and stuff like that. Because you look at the numbers and like, what? How many people voted? What's the percentage? It's like ridiculous compared to other places that obviously are a lot larger. But man, the numbers are whack.
Low.
I don't know. Yeah, they're very low. And I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think that could change? I know I tell Lupe. I know Lupe is the one that introduced me to you, right? I told him, man, there has to be a shift. Like right now with social media and everything going, I think in the next 5-10 years there has to be a way where like we could vote from home. If I'm able to take a final exam from home, all I have to do is show my ID. They have facial recognition now. Or if I wanted to go to a basketball game during the pandemic, I had to make an account. I had to put my records and everything. I mean, I'm pretty sure we're leaning to that where everyone's going to be able to vote on their phone. Do you think?
There's a lot of controversy with that, right? Because of voter fraud.
Yeah.
People want to make sure that the integrity of the elections are maintained, that there aren't some outside forces coming in and some bots that are rigging elections and,
Yeah.
so there's that. So right now we've gone to electronic, right? So we used to have the paper ballot. We still have them, but it's more electronic. So
Yes.
it's a little step.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is just the apathy part. People think, why vote?
Yeah.
It doesn't make a difference, right? And so then you kind of become like into that self-fulfilling prophecy where, you think that you're not going to be able to make a difference, so you don't vote because you're tired of, the politicians, but then those are the same politicians that get elected because you don't participate, right? So it's kind of like a vicious cycle. You have to break the cycle. Like you have to understand that your vote does matter. I mean, look at Congressman Cuellar's race. I mean, 100 and some votes. It was very close, right? So and there's a lot of memes on this, right? Like, oh, my vote doesn't matter, and there's like thousands of them. You see a picture of that, and it's true. Every single person needs to understand that and it's not just coming out to vote. It's being informed on the candidates, like looking who the candidates are. And nowadays, everybody has a website, everybody has a Facebook page when they're running. So it's just a matter of you looking them up, and then you say, I don't like any of these options. Well, you didn't run, right? So this are the options that we have. So if you don't vote, it's going to be one of these people. Yeah. So you have to decide, well, which of these do I want to represent me? And I think it's just people need to understand that their voice does matter, right? And if you do or you don't, could make a big difference.
Yeah. It does.
Voten por Gómez. Está muy joven, está muy inteligente el hombre, muy respetuoso el muchacho. Necesitamos una persona así para que esté en esa posición, ese lugar de constable, y necesitamos una joven así que ponga los pies en la tierra para que nos ayude a salir adelante, y es lo que necesitamos. So, vamos a echarle ganas y vamos a apoyar a los muchachos.
Con el apoyo de todos ustedes, voy a ser el contestable más joven en la historia del condado de Webb.
I look forward to serving you as your next constable for Precinct 1. Thank you.
Do you think there should be like mandatory debates? Like, I know, like, what happened to debates? They just went non-existent.
Why don't you guys have debates?
I know, right?
You guys should host some debates.
Yeah, that'd be good. But then they won't show up. That's what happens. I mean, that's what the news do. They don't show up or they don't want to do it. And a lot of these guys, they don't feel the need to for the same reason, right? The vicious cycle. They don't feel like they need to even say anything. And that's very sad because when you're running for office or any position, I mean, you should get your voice out there, get your concerns out. The people need to know. And the fact that they don't do that, it's concerning to me. Like they don't feel the right that they don't need to do that is very concerning to me. But yeah, mandatory debates would be nice. Get them on there. Hey, at least show up to one. Show up to one. Show me what you got.
What do you think about? I saw this. Sorry, on Facebook, they were taking off like someone's signs. Like, what do you think about that? Like, how crazy is that to take away signs from the opposing people? Like, it's crazy.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because when I ran for office, I said the word sign more than I've ever said the word sign in my life because, that's a big thing because you put your signs up. Like, you have to ask permission if you can put your sign there. You put your sign there and then it's gone. Yeah. And those signs cost money. Yeah, those big signs are like $50 each or more, depending on like size, how many you bought and this, it's money, right? So you only have so many, so you try to be strategic, and then your sign's gone, and it's something all of us go through. Yeah. But then again, some people do put their signs places without permission.
That's true. Yes, that happens too.
So I don't think, honestly, for me, signs don't vote. And that's what I always said in my campaign. At some point, I just said, forget it. Yeah. Because I saw that, like, my opponent, for every one sign that I would put up, she would put 2 or 3 around it, right? Kind of. So I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to keep up with the number of signs. So I just have to hit the ground harder and talk to more people because people are the ones that vote, not people looking at the signs, right? Yeah. So it's not about the signs. The
Yeah,
sign,
and some people are scared to say no, so they'll let you put the sign up. Doesn't mean you have to vote. I mean, they just don't want to say no to you, you know, or something
I
like
saw that
Yeah.
too. Like they'll let you put it up and then you see it
Yeah.
by their garage. Like, you know, they took it down.
I think it's more psychological than anything because it's like if you see signs everywhere and then you go to see the ballot, it's like, oh, I saw this name. I saw it like 100,000 times. So I feel like it's a little bit psychological strategy to that. I'm just saying.
Well, you get the hustle aspect. I mean,
That's
you
true.
you respect someone's hustle. If you see
Yeah.
a lot of signs, oh, they put a lot of work
Yeah,
out
that's
there. But
true.
I never had that impact my vote personally. But I could see how someone that doesn't know about anything, like
Yeah,
they don't know about the
exactly.
candidates, there's no debates,
Yeah.
so they don't know about anything. They just oh, I saw this sign more, I'll just vote for this
Exactly.
person. I could see how that could happen.
Well, think about it. I mean, you go to vote and you may just be going to vote for president or you may just be going and you don't know anybody else.
Yeah.
So you just,
But whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
you put whatever.
That's true.
You know, some people do that. So
Or
that's why-
raza.
yeah.
The
No,
last
yeah,
names.
but you just do whatever you just like whatever you see the names. What can you do with names? I mean, you don't know anything about the position, about what the candidates are. You just like mini money mo type of thing.
Well, that's
Yeah.
why it goes back to not just voting, like informed
Yeah.
voting. Because you show up to the voting booth and you feel good, like, oh, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to vote. But then you just messed up all these
Yeah.
other elections
Yeah.
because you voted for people that,
That didn't really help.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or all the they have them at the end. What are they called?
The referendum.
The referendums. I mean, how many times have I not walked in and I didn't even know there was referendums or I didn't know anything about them? They're reading them like, oh, I don't understand what this is. It's real tricky
Well,
for
there is
somebody.
a way to
And the
check-
wording of those referendums are weird too. I mean, oh my God, they're confusing.
Yeah.
By design. By
Yeah,
design.
there you go. There you go. What you were saying
you were
about
saying
the
something.
referendum?
Oh, just the fact that there's a way to look up like what your ballot's going to look like, but you have to know what precinct you're in.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then you have to, so everybody's ballot is different depending on what precinct they live in. And some people don't realize that. They're like, oh, I'm going to go vote for so-and-so.
Exactly.
Oh, but he wasn't on my ballot.
Yeah.
Because you don't live in that district.
There you go.
I was one of the, I didn't know till Obi helped me out with that.
That's why I told Lupe, you put in your, this is your precinct 1, dude.
Yeah.
You're over here in precinct
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
Nah, I understand that for sure, though. Man, that's crazy, though. And I guess that's something that, what do you think? What changes do you think we need to do to break that vicious cycle of not being informed, not voting?
Probably need like a politics 101 type thing where you teach people like how this works, like civic duty, civic responsibility.
Maybe even a class in high school? I mean,
Maybe.
you got social studies, you got U.S. government. I mean, that's what U.S. government's about, isn't it? I mean, that's what it should be. I mean,
Well, it's local government too.
that's
I mean,
true.
it's
Local. Yeah.
I think maybe it's always going to come back to education.
Yeah.
If as long as you tell somebody, like you show them, and that's where I guess the teaching aspect comes in. Is like, okay, a lot of times like with teaching, you teach a lesson and then the children don't understand it, and then the teacher says, "But I taught the lesson."
Yeah.
But it's your responsibility to make sure not to just teach it, but that they
learn.
understand it.
Yeah.
So you could say, well, I put out a post about it, but they didn't read it.
Yeah.
They didn't understand it. They didn't look at it. So, we need to kind of go back to like teaching principles. It's not what you're doing, it's whether or not people are getting it. And if
Yeah.
they're not showing up to the voting booth and if they're not informed, then obviously we're not doing a good job teaching.
But I do want to mention something. I know there's been a lot of concerns with the water. I know, like, that's been crazy, and you see it in other places as well. I mean, I believe it was in Jacksonville where they're like right now have no water right now, and then I mean, my wife mentioned it, and I didn't really notice it till then. But she's like, "Hey, man, the water smells like a lot like chlorine and stuff like that." And I'm like, "Nah, you just." Whatever. And now as I was taking a shower, I'm like, whoa, I got the stench, like super strong chlorine. So my question is basically like, what are you guys doing about the water issue? Are you guys adding some extra chlorine just to make sure, some Clorox, I don't know, something to keep the water clean?
So,
Or-
you don't follow the City of Laredo Facebook page,
I wish I
do you?
did. No, I don't.
Yeah. We're having a chlorine conversion right now.
Okay,
It's
okay.
like a mandatory process that happens, and I can't tell you the technical,
Yeah.
aspects of
Okay.
it, but apparently it's necessary, and we put out a notice on it that it was going to be happening. So
Oh, I got
I've
you.
not gotten that.
So I should have showered then.
I should have showered for
like
a week.
chlorine.
Oh my God, I'm going to show a shower cap.
Yeah. So about your shirt, the whole clean air movement, you want to go ahead and just touch bases on what it is, where did you get that idea from?
How did that start
How did
too?
it
Like, how did that
start?
start? Who's the first person that brought that up?
Okay, so Clean Air Laredo Coalition, right? It was founded in part with me, with the Rio Grande International Study Center. We kind of it kind of evolved just naturally. And well, it started because around the summertime of 2021, so it's been over a year now. I was contacted, or me and Trisha Cortez from Risk were contacted by a reporter about the ethylene oxide emissions. And we were like, what are you talking about? What is this? And so then the reporter kind of walked me through it, let me know that there's been these studies that have been going on for over 5 years. And ProPublica, she was representing Texas Tribune, and ProPublica, which was the company that eventually put out that map. I don't know if you guys saw it, where it shows like the cancer emissions and risk. Okay. So she had told me that they were working on this website, and she actually walked me through it at one point. She came down and we talked and everything. She was asking me about, zoning and things like this of this one particular company, because really there's only one company here that emits, for sterilization purposes. And that was that company was like the focus of their research. So we decided that there was this risk because we looked at the data, we looked at all the studies that they had put out, we looked at this map, and I remember having been contacted by some people in my community that their children go to Muller Elementary. Apparently, the last day of school in May, at 5 p.m., an email went out to the parents letting them know of this, ethylene oxide emissions, and there were some links there. And they were like, did you see that? And I'm like, no. So they sent it to me, and I looked it up, and I looked at some of the links, and the links went to TCQ. So it seemed like to kind of minimize the issue, right? So I thought, well, this doesn't seem so serious. And then when the reporter started asking me a few months later, I was like, that's what that letter was about. So then I kind of brought that up, and she was like, no, and then it became an issue that TCQ isn't like putting out correct information. And then we started to talk to the EPA. We knew we needed to form a coalition because we knew we needed a strong force to tackle this issue. And the plant is in my district, but it affects the entire city.
Yes, air travels.
Yeah, and so I knew that I needed to get in the front of this thing. So we started the coalition. We said, let's get people on board. We went to the county, we went to the school districts, and we got support. So we said, we got Senator Zaffarini on board, we got Congressman Cuellar on board, Richard Raymond on board, all of our representatives, Tracy King, coming together to kind of say, how are we going to tackle this thing? So you really see, people don't see it, but a lot of the representatives, we all do work together, and it's kind of like, it is cool to see the representation that the different representatives bring. Like, for example, we were having issues with the state, so Senator Zaffarini, she made some calls, and that's when you saw that data that was released on the increased cancer risks in certain precincts.
Yes.
But that was because she helped push that, and then Congressman Cuellar with the EPA. Now we have the EPA coming down on the 15th because they, are basically just doing what they are supposed to be doing and letting us know about the cancer risk and everything, which we already know. And the Clean Air Coalition, we went to the city, and the city gave full support. So they gave Dr. Chamberlain, who's our health director, and Chief Hurd, who's our emergency management coordinator, and also chief of firefighters, on board. So you have this force, and we're actually making a lot of progress.
That's awesome, because I think something we could all agree on is keeping our children safe. I mean, look, this September, it's Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, right? Just me as a parent, knowing that I'm sending my kids to school and I'm expecting them to be safe, that they could actually potentially catch something that could cause them cancer. It's crazy to me. And like, it hits close to home because I have my brother. He was diagnosed with leukemia at a very young age, and there's no reason why. Everyone says, oh, everyone has cancer. There's no details on how he got it, anything like that. And then hearing these type of stories saying, okay, maybe something caused this that we're just not aware of. And if it's just this company we know now, it might not be the only company. And see, as I mentioned before, I lived in front of Wilkinson's. Well, I was going to go on a rant, but I said, no, you know what? I'd rather do it on the podcast. So I took the kids' bikes to my mom's house, and I left them there for about a week outside. I get there, and I noticed that the paint, they're brand new bikes, the paint on the bikes were like chipped and like faded. And I'm like, what? That's weird. And then I got to thinking, I'm like, wait, I was looking at my mother's car. All the paint is faded, like from the top. And I'm looking around the neighborhood, and my neighbors' cars are also faded as well. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, what's causing this? And I'm like, it has to be the junkyard. It has to be this. We can't have a pool outside. And if you look around the neighborhood, you look at the trees, they're like looking like black. The branches are like touching the floor. I'm like, this can't be normal. And I don't see this anywhere else but here. And I'm looking back, I remember that junkyard's been there for a long time, but before it was like piles of junk. You would have like, we would sneak in there like bowling balls, they had a whole bus, washing machines, like a whole bunch of trash like a normal junkyard would be. But then that company built like a huge machine where you could like literally stick a whole car in there and it'll just crush it. And when he did that, he literally like all the piles of junk just went down. Like everything went through that machine in like a very short period of time. And I remember that when they first started, I'm like, you would have explosions. Like I'm talking about huge explosions. It would fill up the whole block with smoke. You couldn't even see outside the window. The traffic was ridiculous. I mean, there was so much going on there. I'm like, how is the city like letting this happen? And I had a very, very long conversation with TCEQ, and I said, hey, are you guys monitoring the air when they're in production? Because they only work like very early in the mornings. Like they're up like at 5, 6 in the morning. They're already working and they're doing what they have to do. And I mean, I know they're melting metal there. I know they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing. I know it because I've seen it. And I'm like, are you guys really regulating them when they're actually operating them? Or because are you just doing it like when they're not working? Because it's going to make a difference.
They're still operating right now?
They operate right now. They're still there full blast. All they go.
We'll talk after.
Yeah, I know. And it hurts me heart because I have my mother there and she doesn't have the means to move. A lot of homeowners there. And then I start thinking, hey, 3 weeks, three blocks down, you have the LC, you have the college. So like, what if something's going on and they're breathing, all these college students are breathing in, thinking they're safe, and they're really getting something that they shouldn't have.
What did TCQ tell you in regards to air monitoring?
They were going to investigate. I spoke to an investigator there, and that's pretty much all I got, that they were going to investigate. So like, but I did a paper on the Clean Air Coalition from my college.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
And I mentioned it to them on the phone. I was like, hey, if I have to go to them, I'll go to them. But I just really want this to be taken care of. They got my name and everything, said they'll get back to me. But I felt like the call was not going to go anywhere, just aside of the tone. And I just feel like these companies sometimes are too huge or too big or too powerful for anyone to just do it on their own. You know, like you said, you need to bring a force in. You need to do something there. And not to add more to your plate, but that's just a concern of mine. I mean, that's noticeable. I mean, you go to the neighborhood, it's evident. And no one's talking about it.
This whole issue of air quality really like came to the forefront for our community, and we actually took steps at council on budget a few weeks ago. We are hiring an air monitor specialist, like somebody to come on board to be in charge of monitoring the air, and not just for ethylene oxide, but for any kind of air quality issues. We're buying canisters, we're investing in making sure that our air is clean, because in reality, TCQ, they will come monitor for air, but they won't monitor for like ethylene oxide. They don't, that's been a big issue with us. And I told the EPA, I said, look at your mission statement. It says to ensure that we all have clean air and clean water. But how do you do that if you don't monitor? You're relying on the company to self-report. So that's kind of how this is, right? Like Midwest Sterilization, they sterilize medical equipment. They put their equipment in a chamber, they blast it with ethylene oxide. Ethylene oxide can permeate pretty much any material, except for like maybe rubber bands and a few things. But basically anything that they want to ship out is completely sterilized with this chemical. So it is an important thing, that the service that they do, right? Their business, it's not like something that is not necessary, but there's other ways that they can sterilize the medical equipment, and they don't necessarily have to do this. But for their business model, it works, but there's emissions that come with it. And they're supposed to grab them, and they're supposed to scrub the stacks and grab most of it. And they claim that they do, but then based on a formula, it still emits like thousands of pounds more. So they're like the number one emitter, or number one or number two. And I don't want to I'm not 100% positive if it's number one or two, but they are up there on the top emitters for ethylene oxide in the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And that's odorless.
And
You can't
colorless.
smell it. You can't see it. It goes through mask. I mean, and then it doesn't stay that long in one place, so
And
it's very hard to
elusive.
monitor.
You can't really even catch it in a canister. You have to have a special canister that's like a special. So if you put a canister out and then you test the canister, you're going to say, oh, there's no ethylene oxide
That's what I'm saying.
because it's not designed to catch it.
So you think it maybe just like the lack of regulations? A lot of those places, the regulations are not really in place for them to be like, monitoring that and all. Is that what it is basically? What it comes down to?
The regulations are there. So like, for example, Midwest Sterilization, right? They're within their permit. Like TCQ allows them to, right? But then you've got the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and they're not on the same page. And that's one thing that we've asked for, is for you guys to get on the same page. Because I actually brought this to council, and the company brought a TCQ representative who made some statements and basically at one point said that the EPA admitted that their data was false. So then we went back to the EPA and told them, and they were like, no. So then they put out an article saying, we stand by our data.
Wow.
And so you see this and we're kind of behind it all, because we're like, well, did you know this? And so we're kind of forcing them to get on the same page, because who do you turn to? You called TCQ, but what if you would have called the EPA? Would your answer have been different?
Yeah, and you're expecting these companies to work together. I mean, that's what I would be expecting, for them to resolve the issue instead of going against each other. That's scary. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm pretty sure the coalition is a big part of why this is moving forward, and I hope the force gets a lot larger and more people become aware of this. Because
Well, join us.
Yeah, I will. I will.
Okay.
But consider this show part of it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, because we do want to spread awareness of that for sure. And I said it hits close to home, and I feel like this is maybe the beginning of something we're unraveling here, because it might not just be your district; it might be all over the city that we're just not aware of this.
Well, EPA's changing their rules. You talked about regulations, right? So they're changing the regulations. So TCQ will have to follow what EPA says as a minimum, if not stricter, but they can't be more lax. So the EPA is actually revamping the rules. It's just like what happened with Roundup. Like, people didn't know that it caused cancer. Then once they knew, then you still see it at the store, but most people don't buy it. But with ethylene oxide, at some point in 2016 is when they finally put out it does cause cancer. So now we know for sure. And then they also know that there's no safe amount. So whatever they're putting out there, even though it's within their allowance of their permit, it's still cancer causing. It can cause cancer. And like you said, how do you know? And cancer doesn't develop overnight. You could end up with cancer 10, 20 years from now, because it's mutagenic. So when it gets into your body, it changes your DNA. So as your body's replicating its DNA, and that's why it's so dangerous for children, because they're very vulnerable and they're growing. So their DNA could be altered by this chemical, and that's where we're like, this is not right.
So much money coming in, I need an umbrella. G shit, Ray Liotta, I'm a good fella. Jesus face on my neck and it's all yellow. You don't wanna be a baller, you a coat teller. Me and fellow two kings, you a soul seller. And we know no rocket club like it's Coachella. Champagne on my hood with a chrome letter. The way we whipping dope, we should get a gold medal. I'm talking meeting after meeting till I can't meet. My schedule busy, so I'm tracking like an athlete. 20 years, 20 tapes, that's a rap sheet.
Like, this is not right.
Yeah, we have no idea what the lasting effects could be. That's like, yeah.
And we have to protect the kids, because they
Yes.
can't not do it on their
Exactly.
own.
They don't have the voice right now. So that's why, like you said, the reason you got into this was basically for this reason, to protect our kids, to protect the future. Right. And I mean, that's the main thing. That's the main concern. So yeah, we expect everyone to work together, and I would want to bring more awareness to this issue. And you do have a website on as well, right? Where they have the map and everything.
Yes.
What's the exact
It's
website?
cleanairlaredo.org, I believe it is.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to get the
description.
and we'll put a description on there for sure.
EPA needs to hear like stories like what you said, and they need to hear the impact for the community, and they need to understand that our community is not a throwaway community. You know, Region 6 is the only region that the EPA covers that did not host meetings for their communities. So all the other communities knew about this issue, that they had the courtesy to come and tell them, and they didn't tell us. And then we're saying why. I mean, if you look at Region 6, it's mostly the south part of the United States. It's like because we're economically disadvantaged, like we're a throwaway community, and we're taking a stand on that and saying, no, Laredo, we deserve just as much as anybody else. This happened in another community. And the EPA did get involved in that one, and the plant ended up shutting down. So we're saying, why not get involved over here?
Wow.
Yes. And I'm sure politics has a big play in there, Laredo politics and all that. But man, this is a serious issue, and I want to make sure 600 to 800 people with air quality control in Laredo, that should be easy.
Yeah.
Laredo, stand up for your city, man. I mean, go out there. You could definitely consider both of us there for sure. And if you need me to speak, I'll speak for sure.
Okay.
I'll tell my story.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that was a short story because I could babble too. Yeah?
So anything you want to say to the viewers, anything, a piece of advice, motivation, something that you will want to share with your social media platforms?
Well, one of the big things that I had said when I ran was like not to let anybody tell you that you can't do something, because I don't know if you all followed my campaign, but there was this whole like, if you're a mom, you can't serve on council thing. I mean, I'm the only mom on council right now as it stands right now, and hopefully that'll change with the new council coming in. But just that you can't be a mom and be on council, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something. Also, when I was I never thought about running for politics, right? And one of my neighbors was like, well, you should be the person to run because we want you to represent us, on council. There's a need, and that's really how it started. It was more the seed being planted by others telling me that I should do it, and then me questioning whether or not I could do it, and looking and saying, well, I don't have all these political connections, and not in all these clubs, and I don't know all these people, and I don't have all this money, because they told me I was going to need all this money, and just having all this self-doubt, right? But others telling me, no, you can win. And sometimes you don't see what other people see in you, right? And kind of take a step back and maybe think, you know what, I can do this, right? And somebody even told one of my neighbors, tell her not to spend too much money because, the other person has more name recognition. She was a former mayor. She knows a lot of people. She's going to win. And I was like, well, no, I don't. I refuse to believe that. And I'm going to challenge that because, everybody talks a certain way about politicians and politics. But I thought, I could be a different perspective. People want somebody new. They want people to come into politics that really do want to serve the community and things like that. And I really had that. So I figured, you know what, it would be good for Laredo's political atmosphere moving forward for people to see somebody like me actually get elected. And that became my goal. It was okay, you're going to put up another sign around my sign. Well, I'm just going to go knock on 100 more doors. Yeah. Or I'm just going to go talk to more people, find out what more things that are wrong and just work that much harder, right? So as long as you're willing to put in the work, don't expect things to just happen for you. I put up a few signs and I didn't win. No, if you really want to win, you're going to have to hustle. We were, block walking every day, out and about. People say, oh, well, we only see the politicians during election time. But because once we get in, we're over here making calls and going to meetings and we're talking to people and we're out there. We're just, it's different because we have to get to know you so that you can trust us to go and do the work. And then we're working. Sometimes I get slammed because I'm not responding on social media, but I'm I can't be on social media all day. Yeah. I'm not glued to my phone, and you don't want a politician that's always on their phone because then what are you doing? So, just. And also challenge people to have a little bit more confidence that their voice matters in issues. Show up to meetings, get involved. If there's something that affects you, like how you said, you took the initiative to call TCQ and ask. Nobody told you to do that, right? But your voice and you doing that could help the entire community. You can be so you don't know the effects of your actions until years later. It's like that meme where they say, you're planting a tree that you're never going to benefit from the fruit or the shade, right? Mm-hmm. It's like that. You don't, I would rather take the brunt of of whatever comes from, you know, the environmental effects, just so that my children and like the children of the future don't have to, right? So I don't want the future to struggle for things that we know are wrong right now. You know, if there's an issue that's been going on for 20 years, it shouldn't be going on that long, because that means that my kids are going to come and have to fix it when, you know, we could have fixed it. And also, you know, just making sure that, you know, you leave places better than you found them.
Yeah.
If you go somewhere, like, just try to make a positive impact on, you know, volunteer to help, like speak up, like send in a comment, or, you know, just be involved. And there's always there's always solutions to every problem. And it's like you hear, sometimes you have people that find a problem for every solution, right? So be the person that finds the solutions and not focuses on the problems.
We got to fix the present for a better future, in other words.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming, for joining us, for
Ladies
your
and
words of
gentlemen,
motivation.
yeah. Vanessa Perez.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.